Hi, my name is Athena and I'm an OB student at Monash University. Today, I'm going to be talking about Joseph Nye's The Powers to Lead, which observes the nature of leadership and discusses its ubiquity in individuals and organizations over time by drawing on examples of historical figures and supporting with psychological research. This book is a perfect starting point to those who strive to take on managerial or leadership roles in the future, as it provides you with strategies that are simple to understand and effective in its approach. Let's kick things off by covering the central idea of this book: leadership. We've been hearing this word over and over again throughout our years of learning, something I'm sure my fellow management majors would agree on. But what is it exactly? The author Nye defines leaders as those who help a group create and achieve shared goals by mobilizing people for a collective purpose. In his book, leadership is recognized as a social relationship comprising of three key components: leaders, followers, and the context in which they interact. In this case, the context consists of both the external environment as well as the changing objectives that a group seeks in a particular situation. The top three ideas that I have learned from The Powers to Lead are: number 1, the notion of eventful versus event-making leadership; number 2, the distinction between hard and soft power skills and the importance of having both; and 3, the types and skills of leaders, that is, the concept of charismatic versus uncharismatic leaders and transformational versus transactional leaders. Let us start off with the first point. From reading this inspiring book, I have come to understand that time and context have a huge impact in leading. In other words, it is more than just your traits that makes your leadership effective. It is not just who you are, but what you do. The Powers to Lead highlights philosopher Sidney Hook's distinction between an eventful leader versus an event-making leader. The former is described as one who influences the course of subsequent developments by his actions, whereas the latter helps to create a fork in the road. Such leaders are called transformational, which will be discussed later in this video. To paint us a clearer picture of this concept, we are going to use Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, as an example. If it wasn't for his ambitious approach towards modernization to adapt to the changing cultural and societal dynamics, Blair would have been a minor figure in the history books. Here, Blair, in his progressive manner, is an event-making leader, as he raised new issues in such a way that changed what would otherwise be the course of history. This aligns with what was written by Edgar Poe in the New York Times in June 2007. Leaders and policy entrepreneurs do not control waves but can ride them. They don't have the power to control events or structures, but can anticipate them and bend them to their purpose to some degree. To take away from this first idea, OB students may find value in the lesson that events create windows of opportunity, and as future leaders, we must have the ability to have intuition and skills to take advantage of these windows while they are still open. Moving on to the second idea. As per the title of this book, you can't really lead if you don't have power, at least not effectively. Prior to reading The Powers to Lead, I had thought that you had to choose either to be entirely assertive in your leading or be more co-opt and cooperative, so that your employees clearly understand your values as a leader and not get confused by if you were to be authoritative and tell them what to do one day and then suddenly leaving the decision-making to them the next day. However, my views have changed after reading this book. Now, I understand the importance of recognizing the relationship of hard and soft power skills in leading, and how a mixture of both is required in order to be effective. This concept is what the author calls smart power. Since I assume my audience has yet to read this wonderful book, I will catch you up to speed on what these terms mean. Hard power is more tangible and focuses on coercion and issue commands. This could mean threats, intimidation, or payments and rewards, which sounds nice and all, but there is always that instilled fear that they could be taken away at any given time. As I got up to this section while reading, I realized my initial thought about only using this command power in leading isn't realistic, especially if you want to have a positive work culture and environment. As leadership theorist James McGregor Burns affirms, those who rely on coercion are not leaders but mere power wielders. To put differently, every leader needs a certain degree of soft power instead of always sticking with the, carrot on a stick approach. With that being said, soft power, on the other hand, rests on the ability of attraction and shaping the preferences of others to want what you want, rather than manipulating their material incentives. This is seen as the intangible assets of a leader, such as their inherent qualities, communications, moral authority, and could be conveyed through leading by example and charisma. Although this sounds much more appealing, too little assertiveness can limit organizational achievement, just as too much can worsen leadership and lead to employee resistance. This is a very important lesson for us OB students as future leaders, to be mindful in our way of leading. Now, I understand that as a leader, we may potentially take advantage of our authority and be too commanding in order to get things done. But that approach of leading, I feel, would be more suitable for times when immediate action needs to be undertaken or when individuals lack skill or knowledge that is required in the workplace. It is also important to note that soft powers, although it builds positive leader and employee relationships, may potentially lead to a loss of productivity due to the more laid-back system. Overall, with this idea, I have learned that you need to have a combination of both smart power in order to lead effectively. Lastly, I learned about the different types of leaders in the contemporary world and the skills that each may possess. These types are charismatic, transformational, and transactional leadership. For my Intro to Management module last semester, I had come across these terms in my lectures, thus I have gained a foundational comprehension of these. Leaders who are charismatic in their approach are those who hold personal magnetism and can inspire fascination and loyalty amongst others in the workplace. They have strong conviction and rely on their own inspirational power resources in their leadership, as opposed to the power that comes from holding an official position of authority. Because of their charisma, these leaders produce more soft power. From Nye's historical illustrations, I have furthered my knowledge of this idea by reading about previous leaders who were seen as charismatic, such as Martin Luther King Jr., Adolf Hitler in the 1930s, and Alabama Governor George Wallace in the 1960s. In reading this book, I was able to connect what I have learned from my modules at Monash to real-life examples, allowing me to gain a deeper insight into this concept. Second, transformational leaders utilize idealized influence and individualized consideration, having the ability to empower their employees to see beyond their own needs and self-interest for the good of the organization. Third, transactional leadership, which, unlike the other two types, depend more on the hard power of inducements and threats. These leaders will create concrete incentives to influence efforts in which rest on reward, punishment, and self-interest. From learning about these three types of leaderships, I understand that the type that you choose will depend on the context and objectives of your organization, as each style has its own potential benefits. Overall, all three of the key ideas proposed by Nye intercorrelate. Choosing what type of leader you want to be and what skill, whether hard or soft for example, you want to exhibit depends on the context, and context being the first lesson I mentioned. Although Nye's work has been thought-provoking, I would like to offer some of my critiques. Number 1. It might reflect too much of a Western-centric view of leadership and might not fully encompass leadership styles and values from different cultural backgrounds. It is important for international leaders to be able to communicate effectively and adapt to the national context of the given country, as different countries will, for example, have different verbal and non-verbal communication styles, such as whether they are higher context or lower context cultures. Number 2, I feel that Nye's The Power to Lead has insufficient exploration of followership. I feel that this book has not dedicated enough attention to the role of followers and how they contribute and influence leadership dynamics, as employees are one of the biggest stakeholders in the internal environment of an organization. It is also important to note their influence on leadership. In doing so, it would help readers acknowledge the idea that leaders aren't the only ones who are able to make decisions in the workplace, and how encouraging employee participation and employee input in decision-making will be more beneficial for the organization as a whole. In doing so, employees will feel more valued by the business and thus increase their motivation to work harder and increase productivity levels. Overall, from Joseph Nye's The Power to Lead, I have developed 3 pieces of advice to my fellow OB students. 1. As a leader, you have to be adaptable and proactive. This means having the ability to adjust your leadership style and skills to the specific needs and challenges that you're facing. Number 2. Being a leader isn't just about authority and guiding your followers. It is also about empowering, inspiring, and fostering growth within individuals and your organization as a whole. Number 3. Building trust and having a positive relationship with your employees will almost always be better than leading autocratically. These are my insights on Joseph Nye's The Power to Lead. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy this book too if you ever decide to pick it up.